The crimson sun of Zerion Prime cast long shadows across the battlefield as Denial methodically cleaned his plasma rifle. Around him, the remnants of the 47th Human Defense Corps maintained their equipment with the same ritualistic precision. They'd developed over 3 years of constant warfare against the Zephyrian Empire. Hazal approached his position on the fortified ridge, her scaled skin shimmering with an iridescent blue that marked her as one of the few Zephyrian defectors who'd joined the human resistance. Her forearms moved with practiced efficiency as she secured her own weapon, but Denial could sense the tension radiating from her serpentine form. The council meeting didn't go well, she said without preamble, her voice carrying the melodic undertones characteristic of her species. Denial didn't look up from his weapon. They rejected the proposal again? Worse. Hazal's primary arms crossed while her secondary hands gestured in what he'd learned was a sign of frustration among her people. They're planning a full retreat to the outer colonies, complete abandonment of the Zerion system. The cleaning rod in Denial's hand stilled. After 3 years of fighting, 3 years of watching friends die to protect the mining colonies that sustained half the galaxy's economy, the human military leadership was simply giving up. He'd expected disappointment, but not the cold fury that now settled in his chest. 20,000 colonists, he said quietly, including the Terran families on the agricultural platforms. The council says they'll evacuate as many as possible, but Hazal's voice trailed off. They both knew the mathematics of interstellar evacuation. The transport capacity simply didn't exist. Denial finally looked up, meeting her large golden eyes. What did you tell them about the Zephyrian battle doctrine? Hazal's head tilted, a gesture she'd adopted from human body language. Everything. How their honor code prevents them from pursuing a retreating enemy beyond system boundaries. How they'd settle into occupation rather than expansion if we simply left. And General Morrison said it was too risky to base strategy on alien psychology. Her voice carried a bitter edge. He said humans couldn't afford to trust the word of any Zephyrian, even a defector. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Denial watched the emotions play across Hazal's features. Pain, anger, resignation. She'd fought beside humans for 2 years, saved countless lives with her inside knowledge of Zephyrian tactics, and taken wounds that would have killed most beings. Yet after all that sacrifice, she was still just an alien to them. You know what the real tragedy is, Hazal continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I actually believed your species was different. The stories my people told about human stubbornness, about how you never retreat, never abandon your own. I thought they were true. But you're just like every other species when survival is on the line. You'll sacrifice anyone who isn't exactly like you. Denial felt something break inside him. Not his heart. That had hardened long ago in this war. Something deeper. The fundamental belief that had kept him fighting when logic demanded surrender. He stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. Without a word, he began removing his combat armor. The chest plate first, then the arm guards, each piece hitting the dusty ground with a metallic clang that seemed to echo across the silent ridge. What are you doing? Hazal asked, alarm creeping into her voice. Denial stripped off his tactical vest, his ammunition harness, his combat boots. Soon he stood in just his basic uniform, looking strangely vulnerable against the war-torn landscape. You're right, he said simply. We are just like every other species when it comes down to it. He turned and began walking away from the fortification, away from his unit, away from everything he'd fought for. Denial, wait! Hazal called after him, but he didn't stop. Where are you going? She demanded, using her longer stride to catch up. To keep a promise, he replied without slowing his pace. What promise? The one I made to a little Terran, girl named Sarah when her parents died in the mining platform attack. I told her someone would always stand between her and the dark. Hazal grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly gentle for someone with the strength to crush steel. You can't fight an entire Zephyrian battalion alone. Denial finally stopped, turning to face her. His eyes held a quiet intensity that made her release his arm. I'm not alone. There are 47 other humans in my unit who joined the Defense Corps for the same reason I did. Not for glory or strategy or political calculation, because leaving people to die when you have the power to save them is what turns you into a monster. He paused, studying her face. The question is, do you still believe in that ideal even if the rest of us have forgotten it? For a long moment, they stood facing each other as the Xerian sun continued its descent toward the horizon. Then Hazal reached up and began removing her own armor. The council was wrong about one thing, she said, as her equipment joined his on the ground. Not all humans are the same when survival is on the line. They walked together toward the distant glow of the civilian shelters, two figures silhouetted against the dying light. Behind them, other members of the 47th began to stir, weapons in hand, following their sergeant into what logic said was certain death. But logic had never understood the human heart, or the alien heart that beat in rhythm with it. By dawn, 49 soldiers stood at the entrance to New Terra Colony, ready to honor promises that their governments had already broken. Sometimes, when institutions fail, individuals must choose who they really are. The Zephyrians would come with the morning light. But they would find something their battle computers had never calculated. Humans who fought not for victory, but for the simple truth that some things were worth dying for, even if the rest of the galaxy had forgotten.